Hello and welcome to this exciting episode of Animal World Live with me, your host, Brent Smith, and today we're going to be discussing some absolutely fascinating things about elephants, bees, and large trees. Can't wait for you to join us. Hello and welcome, and we at Painted Dog TV are very excited to introduce you to Robin from Elephants Alive. And Robin, explain to me, you are in charge of the elephants, bees and large trees.
That's right. So Brent, thanks so much for having me here and for letting Elephants Alive come to speak about the research we do. So I'm the Big Tree Projects Manager at Elephants Alive, which is a scientific NGO based by the Kruger National Park here in South Africa. And my research focuses on elephants and their impact on big tree species, how that affects other species that rely on those trees, and then how we can actually protect those trees against elephant impact. And the reason we look at that here in South Africa is it's very different here in that we fence off a lot of our reserves and we put in a lot of artificial water. So you've got elephants coming past these same trees time and time again because they've got all these boundaries that are either cutting them off or there's attractants all over the show. So it creates this sort of human-elephant conflict in its own sense, where people are worried about the trees getting pushed over and how that affects everything else. And in our past, we've actually had elephants culled because of this reason.
Well, there's also a human-based reason that I like to call the Serengeti Syndrome, where landowners try to create open plains where there shouldn't be, removing all the elephant small fodder and only leaving your large knobthorns and marulas, and again creating conflict, and they get upset with the elephants.
It's always the problem, and so there's so much artificial stuff that we do within the system, and that's brought us to the point where we start to look at ways that you can both allow the elephants to move through a system but keep certain large trees around. And large trees are important in their own aspect, whether it's for the nutrients that they're bringing in or the nesting sites and the shade and all of that. And so we then started to look at ways that we could actually start protecting these trees, and we turned to our partners in Kenya, Dr. Lucy King and her team from Save the Elephants, and they started using bees to protect crop fields against elephants. And it sounds like a strange phenomenon because you're using this tiny little insect to protect something against something as big as an elephant, and elephants are of course very thick-skinned creatures. And so what Lucy found was that elephants have three hotspots or three weak points on their body that bees are attracted to with the sting. And that's the eyes, the ears, and in the trunk. And the trunk's because there's moisture there and bees are attracted to moisture. And so any bee sting there, the elephants are going to feel. And Lucy's found this worked really well in Kenya. They've been able to play the sounds of bees and actually get elephants to move away, and they sort of lift their head and their trunk comes up and they shake around and they move off. And so there's some sort of phenomenon going on there. She then designed the idea of beehive fences, which is beehives connected to one another, and it goes right around a crop field. And so as your elephant comes to crop raid, it touches a wire that connects the two hives. And so those hives start to sway. And anyone who knows African honeybees, they're a very aggressive species and they attack in large swarms.
Everywhere else in the world, they call them African killer bees. That's our normal honeybee. Robin, I don't know, I've just had this thought. Is it possible that also the sound, with how sensitive an elephant's hearing is, of multiple bees at that very high frequency, their wings beating, might also have an effect?
I think sound's very important, and it's the association with that sound.
And so the sting.
As soon as that sound lifts up, and we see that when we work with the bees, it's a terrifying sound because you know it means they're in attack mode. And there's also a special pheromone they give off. It's called the attack pheromone. And what that does is your little guard bees who stand on the outside of the hive, they release this pheromone when they're under attack. And that tells all of the rest that we're under threat, we need to attack. And so it's a very unique pheromone. We can smell it and we recognize it, but we've actually been able to show that elephants respond to this pheromone as well, very well. So the thing is, when you use bee biology with elephants, you've always got to have the accompanying bee with it, because otherwise the elephants are clever enough that they learn over time, if I keep hearing the sound or keep smelling the smell, but I never get stung, they move on.
I think animals like elephants are so intelligent. A lot of people don't give them enough credit. how much they're able to learn. Now, we've got a question for you from CNAC, Robin. And I think you sort of answered it, but you can possibly go a little bit more in depth. And are fences, oh, thank you, Ronya. Are fences good to prevent ellies from going into farms and eating their crops? And what is the success rate of those, the sort of bee protected farms?
So the bee protected farms, which Lucy King runs in Kenya, has about an 82% success rate according to their last official study. What's so wonderful about her project is the farmers are not only having their crops protected, but they actually then harvest the honey and start to sell that honey. And Save the Elephants, or the Elephants Bees project, which is a sub-project of Save the Elephants, they facilitate that process. So what they found is a lot of the farmers actually use the income from that honey to extend their fence, because they realize the importance of the bees in not just protecting their fields, but the pollination service that they give their crops as well. So it's a really harmonic relationship that they've got over there. It's a little different in South Africa because of our fenced off reserves, but that's why instead of looking at the crop side, we look at the big tree problem. And so what we've now started doing is working in the Kruger National Park system in a private reserve called Jejani Private Nature Reserve.
So for those of you who like to look at maps and stuff, Jejani, as the crow flies, is probably less than 10 kilometers, no, probably about 5 kilometers.
That's 5 kilometers.
From where we're sitting right now. So very exciting. And we can actually hear the lions roaring from Jejani right here.
So Jejani's got this wonderful system of so many marula trees, and these marula trees are very important both culturally and economically in South Africa. They produce marula fruit. Some of you may have heard of the liqueur amarula. There's marula beer, and it's very popular with animals as well.
Marula beer season's coming soon.
It is.
We might have to go visit some of our friends from like Rexon. Rexon makes a mean marula beer, for those of you who know Rexon. Okay. So there we go. Magic Dragon Wizard would like to know, how can I go about buying some of the honey you produce? So I think it might be quite difficult if you're not in South Africa.
If you're not in South Africa, we're in a building phase at the moment. The project's growing at an exciting rate, sometimes too exciting, but we've gone from pure tree protection to then looking at small honey production, and now we're starting to look at larger production and working with communities in that sort of sense. So at the moment, our honey is sold to various places around Hoedspruit, the Kruger Park lodges, and then in Johannesburg, Cape Town, places like that. And so any tourists coming to this region are able to buy the honey. But then our problem, and it's a lovely problem to have, is supply, not demand. We've got a lot of people that want this pure bushveld honey. We add absolutely nothing to it. So what you get is whatever the bees are finding in the field in the Kruger Park system. We just now need to start upping our number of beehives to actually show that there is a potential economic benefit to this project. It works really well for protecting trees, and going back to the marula tree, not only are humans and other animals so interested in it, but elephants love it. And it's a keystone species, it's very important, and so there's a lot of concern over elephant impact on these trees, particularly your female trees, which are the ones producing the fruit. And so that's where we run the bee project. It's protecting these important marula trees. Not all of them. We never ever take away elephants' food in general, but it's certain iconic tree species that will become good seed banks for future generations of marula that we hang the beehives in. And right now the results have been really incredible. After 4 years, we basically run a project with control trees, so that means there's no protection on those trees. Wire-netted trees, so that's just protecting the tree against elephants ripping off the bark, and then the beehives themselves. And we've had 82% of those control trees receive impact in 4 years versus 54% of the wire-netted trees and only 10% of the bee trees. And of that 10%, only 1 of 50 are actually dead in 4 years.
Now, remember guys, a lot of this information, because it's coming at you fast and furious, I will be sharing on my social media. I will send you a link to the Elephants Alive website. It will also be in the description of this chat, of this episode of Animal World Live, and they are doing incredibly great work. So just think about that. If you've got a beehive, only 10% of those trees were affected. If you've got a fence around it, over 50% were protected. So using bees, creating honey, creating jobs for local communities, and being able to sell that, as well as protect the trees and invest in an elephant's future, is all down to the bees at the end of the day. That's been the most successful in the last 4 years, which is absolutely incredible. Oh, thank you, Adani. Now, I had a really good question for you here, Robin. Just give me a second. I started yapping on. I've lost it. I will find it again. Anyway, we'll move on from that. So I will find the question again. But we've got a couple of other questions. We've got a couple of nice comments for Robin. Vicky Hosanna Schallenberger says, I would definitely buy your honey. Oh yes, now I remember where my train of thought was going. Now you'll be noticing that while we're chatting, there's going to be videos coming up, and you will actually see my hand pouring Robin's honey into an elephant snare wound at some point here. So what's happened, the vets, Joel and Ben, who are also going to be on the show at some point, they unfortunately are quite busy, with the rhino poaching, elephant snaring and stuff like that, they've found that a lot of the animals are actually becoming, or the bacteria are becoming immune to a lot of the antibiotics that have been traditionally used on snares and with shot rhinos and that, and they're actually using elephants alive honey to treat the wound, because honey's got amazing medicinal properties.
It's incredible as an antiseptic, and so for us to receive the call from Joel to say we need to go and treat this elephant, please bring your honey, I just said to the team we need to get some footage of this, because this is incredible that we've gone from protecting a tree to looking at honey to sell for income, and now the actual honey that the bees produce for that tree project is being used to treat an elephant like that. So we've now actually started putting honey aside when we do our harvest. We call it the medicinal honey, and that's going to be used purely for when we get a phone call from a vet that says we need it for an elephant.
Isn't that absolutely incredible, guys? So the honey, or the bees that are protecting the trees from the elephants, in so actually protecting the elephant's food source in the long run, are also providing honey that can be used on an elephant or rhino that's either been shot or snared as an antiseptic, because the bacteria is becoming immune to the traditional medicinal antiseptics that are being used. So VM and I were lucky enough to actually be with Robin when we used that, and I actually got to pour that honey into the elephant wound, which was incredible. Now I saw here, well, Sinak doesn't think an elephant feels a bee sting. Sinak, well, Robin says you're wrong, and I agree with Robin. And Robin's the expert, so I'm going to go with the expert.
It's in a sad way, we know it to be true, because we've had, not in our study site, but in Kenya, there has been an incident where a young elephant was attacked by a swarm of bees and died from all the bee stings. So they are pachyderms, which means they are thick-skinned around the whole body, but these are very weak spots that they've got there, and it's very sensitive spots as well. And when you think of a bee attack, it's not a single bee that we're talking about, it's an actual colony attack, because the elephant has disturbed the hive, and bees are all associated with that single queen on the inside. They die literally for that queen. And so when that hive's disturbed, whether it be a crop-breeding elephant or an elephant going for a marula tree, and it touches that hive, the attack, we're talking thousands of bees which are stinging the elephant.
Yes. As someone who's been stung by 10 at one side, it was quite uncomfortable. And imagine, from an elephant's point of view, if it's not going to sting on the edge of your nose. If you've got a very long nose, you can get hundreds of bees inside your nose. And I'm guessing what probably happened with that young elephant is that if they're stung inside the trunk and mouth or whatnot, it would actually stop it breathing.
Yeah, it's a breathing problem. So any major stings in the trunk is going to be a massive breathing problem for even an adult elephant. What's also great about the project is we're very conservative with how we work with the bees. We never want to take too much from them, and we've been through a very big drought in this region. But all the little bits of wax that come off when we do the harvesting, we actually turn into products like lip balm and wax wrap, so to move away from plastic. And it's all these sort of model ideas we're looking at, that when it becomes more of a community project, the community have all these different aspects that they can look at for income.
So I just saw it flashed past me. Sorry, we're getting so many great questions, so many great comments. Someone asked if it's possible to donate to help building the hives and stuff, and it is. And I promise you, I'm going to share all the Elephants Alive information on social media and with Robin later. So once we've finished with the chat, so if you guys want to get involved in the Elephants Alive projects, I will make sure all that information is available. But for now, let's keep our questions focused. We've only got Robin for a very short amount of time, so we need to ask him what questions you want to know about the project and what's going on. Okay. So guys are saying, Do you ever have honey badgers raiding your beehives?
Thankfully not, and that was one of our biggest fears from the start. And we actually went to a place nearby here called Maholo Rehab Center, and they've got an infamous honey badger called Stoffels who knows how to get out of his enclosure and is just one really intelligent honey badger. And we were terrified we would put these hives all over marula trees and come back the next day and honey badgers were just coming down and destroying them. So we made a makeshift, almost a fake tree in his enclosure where you hang the hive down and we put honey in it.
No oil's on you. She said, do you hang them to protect them from predators?
Yes. So because they're hanging, and the reason they're hanging is not the predator point of view, that's because we want to encourage an interaction with an elephant, because they hang 2 meters above the ground and any adult bull who comes through to knock down a tree is going to touch that hive. But it just works out that because they hang in such an awkward position, for a honey badger you need to climb up the tree and leap down almost 2-3 meters onto an active hive, and they just don't do that. Not even monkeys or baboons do. Our biggest problem has been ants.
I can actually imagine that.
And the ants, for them, it's just this amazing source of honey that gets put all over the bushveld. So we've had to come with ways of blocking the ants so they don't get down into the beehive itself. But yeah, they've been our biggest problem. We haven't lost a hive due to honey badgers, which is very thankful.
So Ellie Gal would like to know, approximately, I know it's very difficult to say for sure, but on average, how many bees are in a single hive?
Sure. Someone might correct me on there, we're talking thousands, 20, 30, 40,000, depending on the size of your hive. We use small catcher hives because our main priority at the moment is not honey production, it's tree protection and the science behind it. But then as you grow in hives, and we've come up with ways with platforms that you can put an actual 2-3 story hive on, so you've got your supers and all of that, and we've got data to show it works just as well. The elephants don't change their reaction because the hive looks a bit different. They're still responding to this hanging object with a smell and a sound and something dangerous.
Okay, Redstone Prime would like to know, personally, Robin, how long have you been working on the honey-bee elephant and elephant honeybee relationship and project for?
This actually started as my master's with Elephants Alive, and it came from my director, Dr. Michelle Henley, who wanted to look at using this association we saw in Kenya for the South African problem, which was elephants and trees. So since 2015 I've been involved with the project. It's taken me across the Kruger Park system, and also excitedly it took me to Sri Lanka, where I worked with Dr. Lucy King there, and there we were using Asian honeybees for Asian elephants crop breeding, which is a very different reaction because now you're using a far less aggressive honeybee species. Wasn't as successful as we would have hoped because it's just the aggression of that species, but fascinating to see the difference in honeybee behavior. And we've taken the lessons learned there back to South Africa to keep it going, and that's where the honey production side has come from, and that's from dealing with farmers there.
So just quickly, Kevin Kota, all our honeybees are African killer bees. We don't have other bees. All our bees, our normal little pretty honeybee that's in my garden is an African killer bee. And then there was a question from Sinak, and it's a bit of a complicated question, and Robin's probably not the right person to talk to it, but you are involved with the community and whatnot. But the traditional communities around here have a long standing relationship with honeybees and honey, not only as a food source but as also as a medicine. But I think it's a completely sort of different topic.
Yeah, just to touch on that, it's far less evident here we see than in Kenya. In Kenya it's far more of a natural thing. Over here we've actually designed a lovely presentation that one of our Elephants Alive staff members, Ronnie Makakula, who actually works on the project with me, he goes out to the surrounding communities who, a lot of them are terrified of bees and often kill them if they're in their house and don't understand the purpose. And he gives the most amazing presentation as to why bees are important in the first place, and then we start looking at getting people involved with the honey production side, so they start to see that there's more to the bee than just the scary blob of insects that want to attack you.
That hurt you. Now, I've actually been lucky enough to, over the years to, and in lots of different parts of Africa, work with sort of traditional honey gatherers. And the amazing thing is they never kill the hive. So in Gabon, in Congo, even here in the Lowveld, in the Sabi Sands, we had guys who would come in, no bee suits, nothing, and remove a hive and place it somewhere else, out of a lodge room or behind an air conditioner. Mm-hmm. That seemed to be their favorite in the Sabi Sands. So yes, there is a long-standing relationship, but I think with the modern era, a lot of that cultural knowledge has been lost to a degree.
There's a divide, yes.
And Mandy, killer bees are US hybrids, from what I thought. Yes, I think they're hybrids of African honeybees, which is actually more aggressive than the hybrid of the US African honeybee.
So the African honeybee we speak about here, it occurs on our eastern side of South Africa and will go all the way up to Kenya. We've got a subspecies which is called the Cape honeybee, just down in the Western Cape region. And that's more of an artificially bred bee for honey production. It's less aggressive as well. So although it doesn't occur naturally here, and we wouldn't want to use it because of its less aggressive levels, but we're just very thankful that we occur in the same region that this more aggressive African honeybee occurs. And like I say, the bee that we use here in South Africa, it's the same species that Lucy King uses up in Kenya as well.
Now, Les, again, we've got a lot of questions about how to purchase your honey. I think at the moment, export might be a bit of an issue.
Export, we're not at that level yet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We're wanting to get there, and that's certainly the phase 3 and phase 4 moving it like that. But at the moment, it's very much locally based and then to markets across South Africa.
So, Beehive, Robin doesn't need to plant flowers for his bees. His bees are out in the bush. There's lots of flowers around there for them to take advantage of. So I'm just going to change the conversation a little bit. I'm going to steer it towards more the science. And of course, as you said, you've been involved in this project since 2015. And it's showing great success. So are you hoping to expand outside of your study areas and maybe try use the system in other parts of South Africa and the Greater Kruger?
We have, and we actually have designed a manual. So it's a manual that you could give to a ranger or a landowner, and it takes them through step by step how to set up a hive in their property, which trees to use, what sort of height to hang it, how to work with the bees themselves. So what's always important that we try to stress is we're not trying to put beehives in every tree of the Kruger National Park. That's just not ecologically or financially stable. But the idea is that we do it on a big system for the science, because that allows us to play with the statistics and work out what's going on. And then we can go to a landowner or a reserve manager, and if they've got 2 or 3 or 4 really important iconic trees they want to protect, we can say with the science to back it up, this is how well it should work, this is how you should do it. And it's led us to now start working with raptor researchers. So vultures, for example, we started looking at that, and ground hornbills. So these trees where the tree itself is so important because the nest is in it of this endangered bird species. It allows us to start looking at, can the 2 species coexist in the same tree? And we were very nervous with the ground hornbill one because we had them telling us our hornbills will kill your bees, and us saying you've never met our bees, I'm worried about your
bees are going to kill the hornbills.
But so far it seems that relationship's working really well, and what's nice is they're nesting at different heights, and bees are flying out like that. They're not flying up and they're not going down. And so for now it looks like there is a potential that we can protect these endangered birds' trees using the African honeybee itself.
Okay, so there was Mandy, you don't have any we don't have any baobabs in the direct area where the study's going on.
No,
so we're not trying to protect baobabs at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Thank you, Valentino.
There's one place I know of in Botswana who've started looking at this model, and so they've put a couple hives, 1 active and I think 2 dummy hives. And a dummy hive is basically a box that looks like a beehive, but it's got no bees in it, and we use that as a visual stimuli for the elephants. And so I'm waiting to hear how that baobab protection goes. But here we look primarily at marulas, which are such a favorable tree species for elephants that if you can protect them, there's a good chance you can protect most tree species.
Now, Tampa Bay Rabbit would like to know, are the bush babies ever a problem with the bees? I don't think so.
No, luckily nothing jumps on the hives because of the way that they hang so abnormally from a tree's branch. It's such a big drop down onto those hives, and if you are anything that's vulnerable to bees, you probably wouldn't do it, because as soon as you bang that hive, the hive moves and that irritates the bees and they come out. So as I say, it's only been ants, and then we've had some very clever orb web spiders who work out where the bees are feeding.
The flight paths.
And they put their webs up and they start catching the bees, and there's nothing more frustrating as the researcher to come and see your poor little bees getting caught by this very clever
and this really
orb
fat spider.
He's just got these tiny bees lined up that he or she's tied up like that.
And then what animals eat honey in the bush? Well, quite a few actually.
Yeah, the badgers and that would love it. And if we do have a hive that falls down from something like wind, you see the monkeys will go for it as well. Ant species galore, and we've actually now moved our research to looking at how ants and bees interact with each other, because it's just such a powerful relationship where these ants just completely dominate a hive. And I never thought going into this
you would think the
project
bees
that
would be able to sting.
But there's amazing research. We've worked with University of Liverpool, and they've been able to show that as soon as these ants get to a certain density, they just completely shoo the bees away.
What species of ant are they? Polyrhynchus ants, or
they're the ones that occur in the tree itself. I can't.
Oh, to the cocktail ants?
Yeah, that's it. So as soon as there's disturbance,
I would never have
they are
thought that.
so aggressive with the.
And they spray a little formic acid, and obviously
you actually see them if they get into the hive. You see them removing bees out the hive.
Crazy.
Like that.
Well, there's some advice about this. You put Vaseline on the ropes.
We've looked at that. So Vaseline doesn't work too well here because of the heat and the rain.
Melts.
So there's some really good glue substance that you can put on, and it just stops the ants. As soon as they get there, they just stop going through, and then your bees are at least protected as well. In Kenya they use grease, but once again over here there's just so much heat at times on the ropes that you just start seeing these ants crawling through the grease, and then they get into your hive and the poor bees have to defend themselves.
So I Walk in the Rain says, can I sponsor a beehive? Is that a possibility?
We actually are reaching the point now that the project's 400 years old. Our original hives from 2015 are literally falling apart. Okay. And when you get massive winds and it falls out the tree every now and then, even if it's got no bees in it, it starts to get damaged. So on our website is a section for sponsoring the bee project, and we are now starting to open up the idea of we need to replace these hives. And then what we've done in the past is those who've sponsored the hive, we've actually put a little name card on the hive of that it belongs to a certain family or a lodge or something like that. And then we give them feedback on how their tree or how their bees are doing over time. So it's definitely the next phase, that these hives, which are 4 years old, are needing a bit of replacement.
Okay, Painted Dog TV pack. I'm gonna make a plan. We're gonna go. We're gonna go try get some hives fixed for you guys, and then we'll actually do a little video and we can show everyone where the hive is, and we can go check up on it from time to time. So I'm pretty sure us together we can get some hives sponsored for Elephants Alive and this amazing project. Now we've only got 3 minutes left, so we're only gonna take 2 more questions. So who's gonna be next? Oh, Valentino, that is an excellent idea. However, you can't ship honey and stuff overseas without going through a whole bunch of agricultural, I'm trying to think of the right word. Not loopholes, the opposite of.
No, so
hurdles.
Yeah. So all of these things, the reason we haven't looked at it just yet is because we're doing it on a very small scale. We've only just started looking at the commercial side, having been purely focused on the science and the research behind it all. But certainly as our number of hives build up, and as we go into a more wetter period here in the Lowveld, we've also, as I said, we went through a drought, which meant we were very conservative with honey production. But as we move into a wetter time, honey production we hope will increase, and then we will be forced to tackle these hurdles, because that would be fantastic for us to know honey from the Kruger National Parks being shipped all over the world to supporters of the project.
So hopefully, guys, it is coming. But in the meantime, as I said, as the Painted Dog TV pack, we can get together, we can get some cash together, and we can hopefully fix the original hives from 2015, get those bees nice and comfy, and who knows, maybe we'll find a new way to stop the ants.
Thank you.
Okay, so guys, yes, so Charles has popped in the Elephants Alive website there. As I said, just remember there's a Patreon chat tonight for our patrons. VM will tell me exactly what time, but I think it's in a couple of hours. Yes, exactly, Richard. So 6:30 Central African time will be the Patreon only chat. Richard, sorry, you're correct. That it is very difficult to actually bypass the agricultural regulations to import stuff like, honey. We're going to take one last question from Lady Bird. And Robin, why did you choose this career?
Why did I choose this career? I think since I can remember, I wanted to work with wildlife and in the Kruger Park region itself. And so as soon as I was into my high school years, and I think I was watching a documentary where someone came up who was speaking about crocodiles, and it said zoologist/research, and I thought that looks really cool. I want to look into that. And so I studied, and I've finished a master's at Wits University in Johannesburg, and I've actually just signed up for a PhD, so that's my next journey for 4 years. Hope it goes okay.
Professional student.
Yeah.
Well,
And so yeah, it's been my interest. Human-wildlife conflict's been my interest, particularly with elephants. And as I say, in South Africa, this is a conflict situation in itself, and it's great to look at providing sort of methods that we can use to protect certain trees and keep the conflict at a low.
Okay guys, thank you so much, and we're definitely going to keep up with Robin and his project, and we're going to try get together some hives for them so we can go do a video and show you where your hard-earned dollars are going to help the elephants and the bees and the large trees. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Animal World Live with me, Brent Leo Smith. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Painted Dog TV. If you want to become a patron, the link is in the bio, and don't forget to go subscribe to Painted Dog TV's new YouTube channel, and that is VM's going to remind me, live bush cams by Painted Dog TV, which is out there, all our new live cameras, and hopefully by Sunday we will have another live camera at another waterhole in the middle of the African bush, bringing you Africa live right now, all the time. And also very exciting, coming up very soon, probably next week Sunday, is the latest installment, the catch-up of Tale of Two Mothers. Lots of exciting stuff happening. So from us here at Painted Dog TV, it's been great, it's been grand, and thank you so much to Robin for taking time out of your busy schedule and away from your bees.
Thanks so much,
to
and
come
thank you
see
for
us.
the support from everyone. This is great.
And on that note, toodaloo!